Good afternoon, good evening, dear Theosophists, dear friends, participants of the seminar. We are beginning the International Research and Scientific Seminar, The Secret Doctrine by HPB. That is the joint project with foreign and Russian Theosophists and scientists. We are ready to welcome all the participants who joined us and members of the research group as well. Today we have translators Alexandrova Babko, Daria Gasanova, Sergei Nasyatin, Maria Ponomarova. Thank you because you make possible our connection with the world, and you will bring forward thoughts that we'd like to express. We see we have listeners from different countries, from different cities and towns of the Russian Federation. We congratulate you all because we are starting the seminar today. Today we are discussing Sloka 8 of Stanza 1, and we have Mr. Ramprakash, the United Lodge of Theosophists, India, Bangalore, Madam Alexandrova Marina, PhD, Texas University, Austin, USA, Mr. Kishore Angola, Theosophical Society, India, Guntur, Mr. Sergei Shubkin, Doctor of Physics and Mathematics, St. Petersburg Polytechnical University, Russia, St. Petersburg. We hope that today those research parts that will sound will contribute to the most important thing. When it happens, we have an opportunity altogether to be concentrated and focused, to penetrate for each mind into this world of thought, so that this world opens in its individual harmony for each of us, so that each of us in this day is better and becomes better. We wish you all fruitful work. So the joint research seminar, The Secret Doctrine by HPB, is declared open. It's devoted to studies of Sloka 8, Stanza 1, Dzyan. And the starting speech, following our tradition, so that we see links between thoughts of the day and nidanas, will be presented by the president of Adamant Lodge of the Theosophical Society of Russia, head of Moscow School of Theosophy, Mr. Vladimir Yary.
Good afternoon, everybody. We'll start traditionally with the axiom of the day. I think that you are all aware that these axioms give us the thoughts based on their cosmic impulse. This impulse that comes from the space enables us to do it either consciously or unconsciously, to feel this thought. And so we vibrate within this note or the thought that we are given. The thought for today sounds like this: whoever is ashamed of his father and mother is excluded from the ranks of the wise. This is quite obvious. So you understand that you shall never be ashamed of those who gave you opportunity to live. This is unnatural because those people gave you the chance to progress and evolve and go from one level of consciousness onto another. The combination of nidans nowadays looks like this. Before we talked about it, nowadays we find ourselves in the century of the white dragon, which is completed wisdom, which symbolizes this year, this century. Then we have the year of the white bull. This is the completeness of realization, aspirations for more knowledge. This is the symbol of this year. And the month of the red rooster, the red rooster is the symbol for Matrika Shakti. This is the force that enables us at the age of 30 start to view our life in a different light. And this is the main idea behind the red rooster. The rooster helps us to fight our old understanding of this world and to reevaluate our values and be able to see new values and new wisdom to comprehend this world. Then the week is the week of the black hare. Let me give you a little bit more information about it. The previous week was the week of the black tiger, which opened the new esoteric year. So now we're opening the new direction. Here you can see the direction that I'm showing, which is called the body of Buddha. It tells us about the purity of our soul, our shining soul, which gives us clarity and understanding of our direction, of our vision, the route where we want to go. This direction, this space direction, is open for the next 10 years. And new people are born under this constellation, the constellation of Scorpio. In the Nidan of the black tiger, and the black tiger symbolizes birth, infancy of the humanity. So nowadays we reevaluate our values in accordance with the previous space direction, and it shows the turn of the wheel of knowledge. The previous 10 years, we were accumulating strength and power. We're trying to find our guide in the spiritual world. And now in the year of the white bull, we're turning this knowledge wheel. By doing that, we created, based on the old karma of the mouse, the new potential. We tap the potential which we were accumulating, and in this year of bull, we're able to act on it. We are able to use all the strength and powers we have within ourselves as humans, reveal our eternal potential. And the black tiger enables us to get inspiration or to inspire the world that we find ourselves in. So now is the day of the black hare. Nowadays, we are in 2022, which is the esoteric year. This is the manifestation of the female origin. The female origin, this is the womb where all our potential knowledge is buried. This is the mother of the knowledge, the mother of the eternal soul. So this very state that we are entering, the state of the initial knowledge, because that's the black hare that we're talking about, we are ready to acquire new body of our consciousness, which will be aspired to get new knowledge of the whole three worlds. As for the day, this is the day of the blue ball. The blue ball stands for consciousness, the consciousness of a thinker. In accordance with the Theosophical doctrine, the ball itself is under the ray of the space continuum. So this consciousness undoubtedly corresponds to endlessness, expansion, and new opportunities to express the thought of the God. Thank you very much.
The blue board that symbolizes the mind of the Theosophical Society and revelations of these consciousness in every day. And it's so great that today we're having this research seminar devoted to the HPP and the Secret Doctrine. And we invite the first speaker, Mr. Ramprakash, who will present the United Lodge of Theosophists, India, Bangalore. Mr. Ramprakash, we invite you to take the floor, please.
Thank you. Thank you. At the outset, I would like to compliment the Theosophical Society Moscow for so well promoting online international research seminar on the SD. It is gratifying that students from so many countries from all over the world are participating in a seminar. I thank organizers of the seminar to have afforded me an opportunity to participate in the seminar. Then I would like to begin my presentation. So we are considering verse 8 of stanza 1. The verse reads, let's read the verse first. Alone, the one form of existence touched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsates unconscious in universal space throughout that all presence, which is sensed by the opened eye of the Dangma. Here we see so many beautiful phrases. One form of existence, and the analogy of the causeless, dreamless, the dreamless sleep, analogous to the universe in prior, and life pulsating unconscious in universal space, the idea of all presence, and the opened eye of the Dhamma. Now, reading the stanzas of Dhyan, one perceives a poetical beauty in them after referring to the state after the universal dissolution. And that state is indescribable because it is non-existence, non-being, ever unknowable. It can only be referred to in a series of negatives, negative adjectives as not this, which we saw in the previous verses of the stanza. Now, from this stanza onward, from this verse onwards, the teacher begins to describe the state during the universal praya in positive terms. In the positive terms used, we are introduced to the metaphysical ideas of archaic cosmogony, which helps us to understand the discourse given later on the series of stages of cosmic reawakening. So the archaic cosmogony begins with universal and then descends into particulars. From the one, the many, and pervaded by the one, and resolved back into the one, cycles of outbreathing and inbreathing. Here, we get this very important idea of the one. If we can recall that in the SD we speak of two ones, one absolute one and the manifested one. The manifested deity, the manifested logos is actually one. So the conception of one as a source, the sustainer, and the receptacle of the many, and remains one, is a beautiful concept. And we may recollect in this context, in this connection, the beautiful idea, the metaphysical idea of the one in the prayer of Kippur, where Rabbi Solomon ben Gabinol, which is mentioned in the footnote, second footnote of page 439 of volume 1. There's no time to read it, but it is a very beautiful prayer of Kippur, which gives a magnificent concept of the one in many. Now, the method of modern science, as we all know, is the very opposite of the occult doctrine. The occult doctrine proceeds from universal principles and then descends into many particulars. Whereas the discipline of modern science, the method of modern science is to proceed from many particulars and they try to arrive at universal principles. There are so many disciplines of science, so many specializations. But as admitted by scientists themselves, there is no overarching general principle that integrates them all in one coherent whole. And scientists are very aware of this. And they are in search of such a unitary principle, that homogeneous, universal, unitary principle. From this, the heterogeneous universe arises. So they speak of, they're in search of that one universal principle, which is capable of comprehending the many disciplines of science as one complete theory. They speak of grand unification theory, the theory of everything, the string theory, and so on. And these are very abstract scientific concepts, speculations, and they are couched in mathematical language, which is not easy for ordinary person to understand. In the agenda of the secret doctrine, comparison is made between the science as known in 19th century with occult doctrine. But since then, science has made great progress in cosmology, in quantum physics, in theory of relativity, and so on. Now, this student suggests that someone who is well versed in quantum physics and relativity theories, and as well as well versed in occult doctrine expounded in the SD, to undertake a critical study of these later developments of science in the light of theosophy. That will be a very helpful thing. The student is not aware if anyone has done that. So it is worthwhile taking up this special study and update the agenda of the secret doctrine to 21st century. But having said that, this student feels that the criticism of modern science made in the agenda of the SD holds good even today, despite the many progress, the progress made by science in quantum physics and other areas of cosmology. So the unified theory of fundamental forces of science in the light of the occult doctrine of the SD needs to be undertaken. Having said that, it is evident that science cannot arrive at such a unified theoretical model so long as it avoids ontological principles. Science has to blend with metaphysics. The secret doctrine shows the way how to do that. The secret doctrine carries this idea of unity, one in many and many in one, and how to arrive at the universal principle by which everything is known. The secret doctrine shows the way. And secret doctrine carries this idea into the region of metaphysics and postulates one form of existence as the basis and source of all things. We are introduced to the idea of divine eye in the human being, latent in all human beings, the eye of Dangma, the eye of Shiva, Devachakshu, which when awakened, the adept sees the whole universe of the past, present, and the future as one eternal, all-comprehending presence and senses the all-presence, the one form of existence. A beautiful Sanskrit word for that compound word, prabhavapyaya. The state of a pralaya cannot be comprehended by finite intellect. It is obvious. However, we are helped to form some conception of it by the analogy of the state of sushupti, deep sleep. We are not aware of anything in deep sleep. And yet, it is the experience of the higher plane. So, the idea which is mentioned elsewhere in the Secret Doctrine, a thing can cease to exist, a thing can cease to exist and yet be, is an idea which even science recognizes. And Theosophy demonstrates the truth of it. And we see the demonstration of it even in modern science. So one form of existence, prabhava apyaya, the plane or place which is the cause and origination, prabhava, and final dissolution of everything, apyaya. What is that place? What is that plane? To this student, it appears that prabhavapyaya should be the energy of the unmanifested logos, thrilling through the eternal substance, forming the ultimate unity and cause of all manifestation to come, and into which are their ultimate resolution. To this student, it appears that this is Akasha. And also, it can be referred to the energy of the second logos, forming pre-cosmic ideal triangle, the ideal cause of the universe, Father, Mother, Son, of the first fundamental proposition of the Secret Doctrine. The idea of prabhavapyaya becomes a little more intelligible in three distinct presentations of the universe. One, the pre-existing, the second, ever-existing, and the third, phenomenal. The first two are ideal. Pre-existing and ever-existing are ideal and real. Whereas the last, the phenomenal, is concrete expression and symbol of the first two, the region of Maya, Mahamaya. This is beautifully stated in Secret Doctrine, page 278. So ever-existent is one universal light, which the human mind is darkness. Pre-existent is a deep chaos, the storehouse of future worlds. Latent forces lie asleep in it. Ever-present eternal potentialities are latent in it, unawakened. And phenomenal. Phenomenal arise when energy of the ever-existent is reflected in the deep and awakens, stirs up and fructifies the latent forces which are pre-existent. So all the Dhyani Buddha, Dhyani Bodhisattva, Sephiroth, Prajapati, the Sephiroth of construction arise from this point onwards. Then awaken anew all the Brahmas, the Buddhas, the co-eternal forces, the aggregate of host of builders, the first constructive forces. A new universe springs into being. This is very beautifully taught in page 337 and 344 of volume 1. But we are clearly told that prabhavapyaya is not Jagat Yoni. Jagat Yoni is material causative womb of the world, material cause of the world. What is Jagat Yoni? It is pradhana, undifferentiated, manifested cosmic substance, the material cause of the universe. Purusha and Pradhana are parallel. They are two sides of the same coin. Purusha, the spirit, and Pradhana, the undifferentiated manifested cosmic substance, are essentially and eternally one. They are nirupadi. They have no base for their existence. They are, or the two in one, one in two, are self-existent. Nirupadi, without attributes during pralaya. They are aparinama and avyaya. Aparinama, that is without previous cause or producing effect, or avyaya, inexhaustible during pralaya. When time or kala or chronos comes, strikes, then pradhana differentiates into 7 prakritis or 7 planes of cosmic being, presided over by spirit, Purusha. They become vyaya, exhaustible, and parinama, which are produced as well as productive. They become productive. This is beautifully described in first volume, page 582. So in this we have 4 distinct factors: undifferentiated prakriti, pradhana; differentiated prakriti, becoming 7 prakritis, 7 creations of Vishnu Purana; and Purusha, the spirit, which is distinct from Parabrahm; and finally Kala, the cyclic time. So this is clearly stated in the Secret Doctrine, and this is one of the fundamental concepts of cosmology of Vishnu Purana. Now, here there's a very nice clue to modern science, which is in search of a unification of forces, the search of grand unification theory. Now, science tells, the Secret Doctrine tells modern science that they have to blend with metaphysics. Science says matter is energy or force. It postulates universe is all energy. But Secret Doctrine points out it is not energy alone. It is substance of the world. Mind you, substance and matter, or matter is not the same as substance in the Secret Doctrine. Energy alone, matter is not energy. The Secret Doctrine points out it is not energy alone. It is substance of the world, its soul, and time. Time, soul, substance. This trinity, this has to be understood. This has to be grasped. They are one. This trinity of the substance, soul, and time are one during one mantra, and all potential unity acting on the phenomenal plane, the plane of illusion, as 3 distinct things. So this is what the student wanted to present. So any questions are there, you're most welcome. Thank you all very much. Thank you.
Mr. Ramprakash, thank you so much. It was so beautiful where you revealed the theosophical notions that they became alive and natural and actually felt, sensed. I think it's important what happened right now. You were telling us about the research. It was making life alive, and it's equal in what it touches between what was not revealed was revealed, and what did not exist with what will exist. And this equality is actually one of the most important principles of construction of the Secret Doctrine. Thank you so much for this beauty, subtlety, and attention. Thank you. And we welcome the new speaker of our seminar, Alexandrova Marina, PhD, cultural studies, and who studies also literature, and who is teacher at the chair of Slavist and Literature Studies in Texas University, Texas, USA. Please.
Good afternoon. The contribution of HPB to the world treasury of philosophical and spiritual knowledge, her ability to synthesize huge volumes of the most complex information, and her tireless desire to bring a new stage in the development of mankind with her work is outstanding in the world history and still amaze both followers of Theosophy and its critics with the depth, comprehensiveness, and diversity of knowledge it offered. And indeed, even a very educated and well-read reader can easily get lost, so to speak, in the caves and jungles of the philosophical views of Theosophy, set forth in the very numerous works of HPB and her followers. In my speech today, I would like to look at the secret doctrine from a slightly different angle, not as a teaching that can be understood by rational reason, organized in a linear way, and representing a list of facts that must be remembered in order to master the wisdom contained in this book. And although this rational approach is important, in our opinion, it is insufficient to penetrate the secret doctrine of being. This is rather what Andrei Bely, a brilliant writer who deeply understood philosophy in his epoch-making novel Petersburg, called idle brain game, thinking that does not lead to spiritual perfection, but keeps it in the plane of his eye and his chimeric images. In the worst case, the brain game is only a mask. Under this mask, forces unknown to us are invading the brain, including various ideas entering our consciousness from the outside. While the ideas and knowledge contained in such works as the secret doctrine do not pose a danger of a negative invasion of unknown forces, on the contrary, even in the case of incomplete awareness of the information received, it at some point sprouts beneficial shoots in the reader's mind. All the same, a more complete perception and interaction with the text occurs not only and not so much through the habitual consumption and processing of information by the brain. As Professor Rafael Marquez de Albuquerque shrewdly noted at one of the recent research seminars, Shlokas plays the role of seeds that, with proper care, that is, with the help of meditation, will grow into a beautiful lotus in the soul of the practitioner. Contact with the teaching is possible only through this double action, reading the shlokas, assimilating them, and contemplating during meditation, which he compares to water. And since logical understanding is not enough for the full flowering of this secret knowledge, it is necessary for those who embark on the path of searching for the truth to go beyond the usual thinking, which is not so easy for the reader, who is accustomed to being guided by the Cartesian slogan, I think, therefore I exist. It was this worldview of her readers that Blavatsky had to take into account when she wrote down the knowledge revealed to her and transmitted it to the world, fascinated by the promises of rational science, limited in its possibilities of describing the universe even now, and what can we say about the end of the 19th century? The conviction that it is impossible to know all the versatility and diversity of universal forms only by scientific methods lies in the heart of the teachings of this philosophy. This belief was one of the key points that made the Theosophical worldview so popular among writers, artists, composers, and simply sensitive people who could not satisfy either the dogmas of existing traditional religions, scientific achievements, or fleeting pleasures of the flesh. Feeling that a whole unknown world is hidden behind the veil of Maya, creatively gifted people have found and are finding in Theosophical teaching the key to reaching new levels of consciousness. How does the Theosophical teaching expand the consciousness of students and prepare them for the perception perception of a different dimension in a similarly familiar reality. And to such an extent that once having known these depths, it cannot, as they say, be unseen. In the interpretation of the 7th shloka, it is written that it is impossible to imagine anything without a reason. Such an advance leads the mind to the limit of consciousness. In fact, this is the state of which the mind must eventually come when we try to trace a chain of causes and effects in reverse order. Bringing the mind into such a state, what we now call the technique of changing or rather expanding consciousness, is one of the goals or objectives of the secret doctrine. And from this point of view, it becomes obvious that this work is not only a collection of diverse knowledge, but also a kind of mind simulator designed to help the seeker of truth to rise in new heights of spiritual development. But that's not all. The secret doctrine is also a literary work of rare beauty. Its communication should be conveyed as with poetry, maybe even recited, although this monumental work looks like prose. The secret doctrine is a highly artistic work, the pleasure of reading which is comparable to the pleasure of reading ancient epics or psalms. In fact, there are songs of supreme love for the universe. Thus, I urge you today to feel this epic of a new era. So to speak, only a single form of existence, boundless, infinite, causeless, stretched out, resting in a dreamless sleep. Unconscious life pulsated in universal space, in the omnipresence of that which is felt by the open eye of Dangma, and in English.
Alone, the one form of existence stretched boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all presence which is sensed by the open eye of the Dangma.
The fact that this shloka sounds like poetry should not surprise us, because the shloka is the poetic meter that the Bhagavad Gita and other works of Sanskrit are written with. Thus, even in the structural design of this work, the intention to close the innermost knowledge in the poetic form of ancient sacred texts of Hinduism clearly emerges, combining a shloka and stanza. And stanza is a stanza or paragraph in the Western poetic tradition. The author symbolically unites East and West in a single sacred poetic work. Although Blavatsky's remarkable literary talent was fully revealed mainly in her works written in Russian and for the Russian public, from the caves and wilds of Hindustan, the Darbar and Lahore, mysterious tribes on the Blue Mountains in the wilds of India, in the secret doctrine, her writing gift manifested itself in a more subtle form. However, let us turn to the text of the 8th shloka itself. In the previous shloka, it was said that the causes of existence had been done away with, the visible that was and the invisible that is, rested in internal non-being, the one being. The 8th shloka further clarifies the concept of the one being, describing it in terms that turn this definition into existence in apophatism, when the deity, or in this case, or one form of being is described with the help of negation, boundless, infinite, causeless. Combining the description of the state of rest, pralaya, and dynamically stretched being with the inner pulsation of life, accurately conveys the feeling of expectation and readiness for the appearance of something new. Omnipresence can be understood as the absolute, supreme deity, infinite essence, underlying the universe, but not visible to ordinary people because they are distracted by the constantly changing forms and colors of Maya and cannot see the reality hidden from them. Only Dangma, a purified soul, one who has become a Jivanmukta, the highest adept, Mahatma, has the gift of spiritual intuition. How to reach the stage of spiritual development at which the eyes of the heart open? In the work The Key to Theosophy, 1889, chapter What is Practical Theosophy? Contains explanation about the inner growth and improvement of the disciple or chela. According to Theosophy, there are stages in a personal spiritual development that inevitably leads higher and higher if the disciple makes every effort to ascend. You should always help others, be a virtuous and courageous person, faithful to your chosen path and teacher. Reading theosophical books and comprehending what has been read also the important part of this path. Therefore, the secret doctrine is considered by the followers of the ideas of theosophy as one of the most important causes of secret knowledge. Another way to communicate with the Shloka in particular and with Hebrew work is, in general, to perceive them as music. William James was the first who scientifically began to study mystical and esoteric experience. James presented the results of his research as a series of lectures at the University of Edinburgh, and their publication in 1902 under the title Varieties of Religious Experience created a real sensation, upending existing ideas about the psychology of believers and those who, not being believers, experienced a mystical experience. Having grown up in a family of Theosophists and himself associated with this teaching, James was one of the first to include a quote from Blavatsky's work in scientific text, a step that became an important milestone on the way to her recognition as a modern scientist and mystic in the pantheon of great philosophers. In his book, Echoing the Doctrine of Theosophy, James called for the acceptance of unity of the basic principles of all major religions. Overcoming all the usual barriers between the individual and the absolute is a great mystical achievement. And in mystical state, we both become one with the absolute and realize our unity. This is an eternal and triumphant mystical tradition almost unchanged by difference in climate or religion. In Hinduism, in Neoplatonism, in Sufism, in Christian mysticism, in Whitmanism, we find the same repeated note, so that in mystical utterance there is an eternal unanimity that should make the critic stop and think, and which leads to the fact that the mystical classics, as already mentioned, have neither a birthday nor a homeland. Constantly talking about the unity of man with God, their speech precedes languages, and they do not age. Further, James gives examples of seemingly contradictory phrases, arguing that they are partially similar to musical compositions. In mystical literature, such as contradictory phrases as dazzling obscurity, whispering silence, seasoned desert, are constantly encountered. They prove that it is not conceptual speech, but rather music. That is the element with which mystical truth best appeals to us. Many mystical writings are really nothing more than musical composition, and here he gives a whole set of quotations from Blavatsky's famous work, The Voice of Silence, although without mentioning the author. In addition to the indisputable advantages of secret doctrine as a philosophical work and theoretical justification of the basic postulates of Theosophy, it is also an outstanding work in its artistic qualities, the reading of which gives great aesthetic pleasure. Written in the traditions of ancient Indian and Western literature, the secret doctrine can simultaneously be understood by the mind and felt by the heart. And this unity of different layers of the work is one of the secrets of this outstanding work. Thank you.
Dear Marina, thank you so much. It is such an exciting culturological study. And thank you so much for having paid attention to this music, this poesy of putting verses together. It's so important, and this feeling of expecting something, of being ready for something new emerging, and this new one emerged in your work today, and you gave us an opportunity to see it, to feel it. So thank you so much. We are ready to welcome our colleague from India, Mr. Kishore Angoli, Theosophical Society of India, Guntur. Please take the floor.
Greetings to all the Theosophists of the whole world. Let us just mention the Sloka on which we are discussing today. Alone, the one form of existence, stretched, boundless, infinite, causeless, in dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space, throughout that all presence which is sensed by the opened eye of the Dangma. In India, it is called the Eye of Shiva. But beyond the great range, it is known as Dangma's opened eye in esoteric phraseology. All the description has been given in the commentary itself very clearly. Dangma means a purified soul, one who has become a Jivan Mukta, liberated one, the highest adept, or rather a Mahatma, so called. His opened eye is the inner spiritual eye of the seer, and the faculty which manifests through it is not clairvoyance as ordinarily understood, the power of seeing at a distance, but rather the faculty of spiritual intuition through which direct and certain knowledge is obtainable. This faculty is intimately connected with the third eye, which mythological tradition ascribes to certain races of men. Fuller explanations will be found in the book, the second part. See, these are the various expressions of Dangma. You can, you know, it. The Buddha, in the Buddhism, it was shown as the third eye, the Shiva's third eye, the Ra of Egypt, and the Ajna Chakra, and the science says that it is the expression of pineal and pituitary gland. You can see it. Everything is clear, and it is the third eye. The open eye, known in India as the Eye of Shiva, can be used by the initiate to sense the ultimate realities, not the real realities. The initiate, rich with the lore acquired by the numberless generations of his predecessors, directs the eye of Dangma toward the essence of things in which no Maya can have any influence. He is beyond Maya. The person who has got his Dangma, the third eye, he can see everything beyond Maya. That is, his ICC is unveiled. The tendency of modern thought is to recur to the archaic idea of a homogeneous basis for apparently widely different things. Heterogeneity developed from homogeneity. Very clear. In the commentary itself, it is explained in a very clear way. Biologists are now searching for their homogeneous protoplasm and chemists for their protyle, while science is looking for the force of which electricity, magnetism, heat, and so forth are the differentiations of this Maya, this Dangma. The secret doctrine carries this idea into the region of metaphysics and postulates a one form of existence as the basis and the source of all things, as our other brothers have expressed, the Prabhava Apyaya. The Sanskrit word is Prabhava Apyaya, the place or rather plane whence emerges the origination and into which is the resolution of all things, says a commentator. It is not the mother of the world, as translated by Wilson in Vishnu Purana. For Jagadyoni, as shown by Fitz Edward Hall, is scarcely so much the mother of the world are the womb of the world as the material cause of the universe. The Puranic commentators explain it by Karana, but the esoteric philosophy by the ideal spirit of that cause. It is in its secondary stage, the Swabhavat of the Buddhist philosopher, the eternal cause and effect, omnipresent yet abstract, the self-existent plastic essence and the root of all things. Viewed in the same dual light as the Vedantin views his Parabrahm and Mula Prakriti, the one under two aspects, it seems, indeed, extraordinary to find great scholars speculating on the possibility of the Vedanta and the Uttar Mimamsa, especially, having been evoked by the teachings of the Buddhists, whereas it is on the contrary, Buddhism of Gautama, Gautama the Buddha, because of him, the Buddhism is known to everybody. Buddhism was there, Buddhism will be there after also. That was evoked and entirely upreared on the tenets of the secret doctrine, of which a partial sketch is here attempted, on which also the Upanishads are made to the rest. The above, according to the teachings of Sri Shankaracharya, is undeniable. If Prabhavapyaya is understood as is a Sanskrit term formed by two words, Prabhava, meaning source or origin, and Apyaya can be translated as cessation or dissolution. Thus, the compound term means the original source and place of dissolution. From where it comes, there it goes, it unmerges. The tendency of modern thought, here in the footnotes of the secret doctrine itself, they have mentioned the one small differentiation here, and yet one claiming authority, namely Sir Monier Williams, a Bowden professor of Sanskrit at Oxford, has just denied the fact. This is what he taught his audience on June 4, 1888, in his annual address before the Victoria Institute of Great Britain. Originally, Buddhism set its face against all solitary asceticism to attain sublime heights of knowledge. It had no occult, no esoteric system of doctrine, withheld from the ordinary man. And again, when Gautam Buddha began his career, the latter, and Gautam Buddha began his career, the latter and lower form of yoga seems to have been little known. And then, contradicting himself, the learned lecturer forthwith informs his audience, we learn from Lalita Vistara the various forms of bodily torture, self-maceration, and austerity were common in Gautama's time. So this is called Hatha Yoga. Hatha Yoga is not at all being practiced anywhere right now, anywhere in the world. But the lecturer seems quite unaware that this kind of torture and self-maceration is precisely the lower form of yoga, Hatha Yoga, which was little known and yet so common in Gautama's time. The commentary written in 1888, even now, Hatha Yoga is not at all being practiced anywhere. It is even argued that all the six darshanas, let us just mention the six darshanas, Nyaya is logic. You can see anything through logic. Vaiseshika, the atomism, Sankhya, the enumeration, and Yoga, the meditation, and Mimamsa, the Vedic exegesis. See, these are six darshanas. It is even argued that all the six darshanas, schools of philosophy, show traces of Buddha's influence, being either taken from Buddhism or due to Greek teaching. We labor under the impression that Colebrook, the highest authority in such matters, had long ago settled the question by showing the Hindus were in this instance the teachers, not the learners. In the commentary, it has expressed about the dreamless sleep. Dreamless sleep, as you know, if you are in the sushupti state of consciousness, that is dreamless state, you will not be aware of anything. Dreamless sleep is one of the 7 states of consciousness known in Oriental esotericism. In each of these states, a different portion of the mind comes into action, or as the Vedantin would express it, the individual is conscious in a different plane of his being. The term dreamless sleep in this case is applied allegorically to the universe to express a condition somewhat analogous to that state of consciousness in man, which not being remembered in a waking state seems a blank, just as the sleep of the mesmerized subject seems to him an unconscious blank when he returns to his normal condition, although he has been talking and acting as a conscious individual world. Dreamless sleep is 7 states of consciousness. What are the 7 states of consciousness? The 7 states of consciousness are waking, dreaming, sleeping, transcendental consciousness, cosmic consciousness, God consciousness, and unity consciousness. We can see it as physical, astral, causal, buddhic, atmic, anupada, and adi. Dreamless sleep is what we see every day in our daily life. For example, if you are physically tired, completely tired, you will have a sound sleep, wherein you will not know anything, just like as said above, as a mesmerized subject. The universe is in that state during the pralaya. Finally, concluding my talk, let us ponder on 3 important words of this sloka. Number 1, the pulsation, the 7 states of consciousness, and the Dangma. In the research or sadhana point of view, these 3 are to be experienced internally, micro level, and externally, macro level, to understand the 7 stanzas. Thank you so much for giving this opportunity.
Mr. Kishore, thank you so much. It was a great speech, and as we were listening to you with great attention, I caught my thought that once you start to understand that there is a great difference between notions that are well known, that seem to be well known, and it's possible only when we all together work with one singular thought. And this general focus, common focus in one space, lets us penetrate those zones of the secret doctrine and see this difference. Here is the cause, the spirit, and the ideal spirit of this cause. And it seems to be one single state, but they are different, in fact. And here you can sense how they differ. Thank you for notions of 7 states of sleep and 3 points that let us unite the internal to the external. Thank you so much for this research. Dear friends, we invite Mr. Shubkin Sergei Pavlovich, Doctor of Physics and Mathematics, St. Petersburg Polytechnical University of Peter the Great. We're waiting for you. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues. I'm really grateful to the previous speakers for their presentations. They were quite detailed and they gave us the introduction to this topic. So here you can see the same Shloka, the 8th Shloka of the first stanza. So what I would like to do today, I would like to talk to you as a physicist, and I would try to comprehend these states. So the one single form of existence, which is boundless, infinite, causeless, stretched out, resting in a dreamless sleep. So this is a certain stage which was there before Mahapralaya, Mahamanvantari. And I believe that the first who was trying to comprehend this idea was Isaac Newton. So I would like to comment and claim that Newton undoubtedly had esoterical knowledge. And I think this is what enabled him to make this major contribution to modern science. And even nowadays, this scientist is a great scientist. All the modern laws of physics that we're using today are based on works of Newton. I would like to underline the fact that Isaac Newton was the first one who introduced the concept of absolute space and absolute time. Absolute space for him was a certain stage where all events and actions take place. In this absolute space, initially, there were no movements with acceleration. It was either calm or very slow, tedious, linear movement. According to physics, we have the principle of the relativity. If we have calm and the linear movements, then they should be considered as equal. So there are no tools, no experiments for us to differentiate between these two stages. That's why absolute space initially existed, but yet there were no movements there. When I say movement, I mean movement with acceleration. So when Newton introduced the idea of absolute space, time acquired similar properties. So the time back then was linear. There was no acceleration of time, no slow. The time couldn't be slower. So from the physical point of view, the time was there, but there were no cycles of time. And the genius of Newton revealed itself. I think that we all understand nowadays that he knew a lot about esoteric knowledge, he knew a lot about ancient studies, and based on that, he provided us with this great big picture of Pralaya stage before the Mahamanvantara. This is a stage where cycles first came into existence. Time started being splitted into smaller cycles. Differentiation of time comes into being. Time starts accelerating and slowing down, depending on the phase of development. And time, as we know it today, appears. This is a very interesting moment that I would like to draw your attention to. Here you can see it is possible to, thanks to Isaac Newton. He made this major contribution. Now, a problem that I would like to discuss with you, that's the problem that I've been struggling for quite a long time. This is the problem of Mahamanvantara, which is divided into 7 Manvantars. This information is written in the works of Blavatsky and also our Theosoph, famous Theosoph, Mr. Bakhanov. In his works, he also mentioned this division. He provides a diagram, and the diagram you see now on the screen is the diagram with this Theosophist. So he said that Mahamanvantara is 311 billion 40 million years. So those are 72,000 days of Brahma. 72,000 days of Brahma. 1 day of Brahma is 4 billion years, which is a major number for our 10 Manvatars. As you know, nowadays we find ourselves in the 4th Manvantara, the Earth chain. So for this 4th Manvantara in Blavatsky works, she said that it's 1 day of Brahma. So 3 billion, 32 millions is just 1 day of Brahma. And 72,000 days of Brahma for 7 Manvatars. This figure is very hard to comprehend. It doesn't fit within the common narrative. We cannot understand how the time is being distributed among other Manvatars. Before our Manvatar, there were 3 Manvatars, and we're going to be followed by 3 more Manvatars. So what I was trying to do, you can see the picture here. You can see 7 Manvatars, our 4th planet Manvantar chain, as you can see here. Before that, we had 3 other Manvantars, and then 3 more are going to follow. If we consider the scheme provided by Blavatsky for other cycles, the scheme was quite simple. As the correspondence grows, I'm talking about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the time grows accordingly by this time, by once, twice, 3, and so on. We have 2 main points. So one Manvantara is the 72 days. So I mean that the sum of all the Manvantars is 72,000 days, or Brahma days. Or you can see in the slide 311,040,000 years. If we use the scheme provided by Blavatsky, the fourth Manvantara is 1/4 of the day. Here you can see it's 1/4 of Manvantara. Then the first Manvantara is going to be 1/4, then 2/4, 3/4. The recent one is the 4 divided by 4, which is the current Manvantara. Then you see 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and so on. As a result, we get 28 divided by 4, or 7 days of drama. So it cannot equal to the number we initially had, which is 72 days. So this scheme shall not be used because it does not fit within the narrative. There is an assumption to be made. Maybe it's a false one, but still I'll try to claim that. The fourth Manvantara, at the very bottom, you can see that the physical plane, it has minimum time. So 1 day of Brahma, which is really, really few in comparison with 72,000. If we assume that all Manvantara of higher level have more time. As we approach the Manvantara from the first till the 7th one, the time will grow. Let us take X, which is going to be bigger than Brahma days. So those are 5th and the 6th, then the square one is going to be the preceding ones, the 1st and the 7th. If we use that with the approximation of time on Mara Manvantara in the days of Brahma, then you see the cubic equation. As a result, Manvantara, the 3rd and the 5th, have 32,068 days of Brahma. The second Manvantara, which is the 6th, are going to be longer. It's 1,000, and here we have 86. And the last and the 7th are going to be the longest ones, 34,000 and 87 days of Brahma. If you put it in such a way, then it all seems to make sense. Yet here we have a dilemma to struggle with. Of course, we tend to evaluate Manvantara existence that are located at other planes which are more subtle, so we tend to see them in the perception of our time on Earth. So 1 day of Brahma is seen as 4,032 million years. I understand that the figure of 1 day of Brahma can be changed. 1 day of Brahma is a universal unit. I think that Blavatsky in her works in Buddhism, it was noticed and in more precise manner. For me, a day of Brahma is an esoterical unit of time. So at this stage, it is 32 billion of years. Maybe it's only true for this phase, and then it can change. Maybe that's the information that we're given. So all in all, that was the equation that I wanted to show you. This is the scheme of times And it is my attempt to explain the existence of all 7 manvantars in our Mahamavanvantar. In conclusion, I would like to praise Mr. Ramprakash. I really liked his presentation. It was really insightful. I fully agree that physics cannot exist without taking into account the knowledge of the secret doctrine and theosophical knowledge. Yet physicists always aspire to do that. I gave you Newton as an example. He was the person who had this knowledge, and thanks to him, we made this giant leap in our understanding of the world. In physics, we're looking for the single source of energy. We understand that time has many facets. That's why time has a lot of aspects to it. It's not just energy, many different energies, energy of mechanics, energy of life as well. And when we see these facets of time, and as we study them, I think we will approach the general understanding. We'll understand everything in this life is alive. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
8 slokas are the most difficult in the secret doctrine. They can be understood of revealing some understanding of the world. And thank you for materials used by by using materials of Mr. Bakanov. When we start talking about time, that was not moving in endless stocks of duration. It's very important because time emerged only with the mind, and the mind plays a crucial role here. If we talk about law of relativity, then using it and using analogies, as well as knowledge of numbers, how it's built esoterically as well as the word, it's all the secret hidden behind symbols. What is the secret? The number is given, but we should decipher it, not use it as we use it in arithmetics. It shouldn't be read like that. The number symbolizes a particular event, and it depends on relativity of the law instead of mind, according to this relativity. Thank you. This thought, written this morning in Agni Yoga, Madam Rerich writes that when we use statistics to numbers, to calculations, it's a mistake. A number calculated will never give us movement of spirit. Matter is only when spirit starts moving. It cannot be calculated. When we put concrete statistic numbers, we lose this penetration. We think only in terms of matter. What is material number? It's nothing. And the secret doctrine doesn't touch upon it, because if HPB does not give particular cycles, we count them according to the 3 fundamental bases of the secret doctrine put in the preface, and they're concrete concerning every method of calculation. If we use these fundamental ideas, the way this sevenfold notion is moved, if we apply this sevenfold notion to the system you're considering right now and calculating manvantaric cycles, we'll have no questions, no secrets, because the spirit is preliminary. It starts moving in the matter, and it's a great speed, the most solid state is the fourth state, and after that there is finish. So there is a law of developing the cycle of time, and we shouldn't forget about this. It's just a thought to remind you that when we want to consider something in particular, something concrete, we should understand the general notion first, and after that the concrete will give us numbers, but vice versa, it doesn't work. We've always been somehow limited, but Mr. Sergey will discuss it at the Congress. Very exciting. Thank you. Dear colleagues, today we had an opportunity to reflect on the material of Sloka 8, first stanza of the Yan, and it's the most important task of our seminars to give opportunities for all to be in this energy and this concentration of thought, to reflect all together, to study and to follow how abstract notions are being formed, and therefore we are bringing them forward. And in these 2 hours, we purify the space and putting subtle plane closer to our senses, to the solid plane. I'd like to add several ideas that came to me while I was studying the 8th sloka of stanza 1 of the Secret Doctrine. The causes of existence had been gone away with the start of Sloka 7, and we say that Sloka 8 is the follow-up to Sloka 7. It starts with Alone and speakers that presented their research in a great volume and detail. We can also pay attention while studying this description of space state. What can we pose attention to? The causes of existence had been done away with. The visible that was and the invisible that is rested in eternal non-being, the one being and alone, the one form of existence stretched, boundless, infinite, causeless, and dreamless sleep. And life pulsated and conscious in universal space throughout the all-present, which is sensed by the opened eye of the Dangma. I would like to focus on several key moments concerning state of dreamless sleep, pulsation of life, and all presence which is sensed by the opened eye of the Dangma. If the eye of the Dangma is the eye of Shiva, destruction for the sake of creation, it is continuous reincarnation. He is the third one. He is salvation from duality and opposing. The all-presence is the single form of existence where the life pulsates unconscious, which can only be sensed by the opened eye of Dangma. Dangma means a purified soul. Mahatma, his opened eye is an ability of spiritual intuition through which he gets direct and credible knowledge. That is the key moment we'll focus on and would like to consider it in more detail. Therefore, there is a state or a space in which spiritual intuition can get this credible knowledge. What is this state exactly? The Secret Doctrine relates this idea to metaphysics and says, as a premise, that a single form of existence is a base and source of ideas, or Prabhavapyaya, as many speakers have noted today, the plane where all started and where everything dissolves. According to Theosophical notions, this plane is called the plane of prototypes. Let us fill this plane of being today with what is there in the current period. What does not exist, what is not manifested. At this plane there is homogeneity from which heterogeneity develops. The esoteric Theosophy philosophy sees this state of space at this stage of pralaya as the ideal spirit of cause. At this plane there is also Quran. Quran is an unmanifested potential causal pretext that will once take a form of visible effect of the material universal cause. And basis and root of this cause of Quran is actually the single causeless cause. The eye of Dangma does not see, but it senses. So the eye sees but it is the essence that senses. So the Dangma does not sense his own essence. He feels the all-presence that manifests from the unmanifested plane to the physical plane. And if there was no physical plane yet, like person was not, there was no consciousness. And therefore the unconscious life was pulsating. Then Dangma has nothing to sense, and he has not yet opened his eye. If we see that from the plane of unmanifested to the physical plane, there are 7 states of mind. According to the planes of being, we can understand these states. Each of these states of mind is a part of mind that is activated in other part of being. Do you understand how exciting it is? So there is a state of consciousness that starts acting from a different plane. Here is the causal law, and one of these states is a dreamless sleep. According to description, HPB says that a dreamless sleep is a gap that seems to be the state that is not held by memory in the waking state. But what is this gap, which is actually a completeness? It is the cause of light and darkness. The cause of light and darkness is the state of the undifferentiated world. That is, darkness and light are not opposite to each other. In this state of consciousness and in this non-cycle of one large cycle, light as the first potentiality awakening from its light state to become a force is the first tremor of undifferentiated matter, transforming it into objective matter and into a plane from which manifestation will begin. Here we can see this animation that gathers this emanation to be manifested. In the Secret Doctrine is said that darkness makes light visible. Light is the first glimmer that appears in undifferentiated matter, throws light into the sphere of objectivity at the level from which manifestation begins. This first glimpse is actually the gap of consciousness. The gap of consciousness mentioned in the Sloka means state of space and mind being in Akasha. Akasha, which is filled with the subtlest energies, is a space filled up to the boundlessness. Therefore, it is an apparent gap of consciousness. Practically, that is the state of equilibrium, an apparent emptiness, or shunyata, which is complete completeness, in which there is a gap of consciousness that appears. In Mahayana, it's said that Akasha is beyond existence and non-existence and is associated with this concept of shunyata. Beyond, there is also prajna paramita, which means transcendental wisdom, which is comprehended as unobstructed space and the main characteristic of Akasha. This characteristic is unobstructedness or continuity, from which duration subsequently originates. Therefore, duration originates, and the comprehension of prajna paramita is revealed as an absolutely continuous and intuitive process that does not include any reasoning and discourse. And this process, which excludes reasoning and discourse, is on the plane of prototypes. It is there that the ability of spiritual intuition arises, through which the opened eye of Dangma receives direct and credible knowledge. Akasha from Sanskrit is a super-sensible spiritual essence that fills all space, the primordial substance from which the first logos is revealed or expressed thought. Therefore, the thought is expressed and radiated with the first logos, and it goes through all planes because each plane has an impetus, and it will be the most important one as the germ of manifestation, of potentiality, of revealing time defining its speed in every day or manvantaric cycle. Because in human being, as it's important, Akasha is manifested as a very subtle sound vibration. And this first sense is sound. The sound, a sequence of rhythmic movements. All feelings relate to each other in one way or another. And if we recognize their interconnection, then we must recognize their interchangeability. Interchangeability is achieved only by penetration or permeability. Akasha is the cause of sound, psychic and spiritual cause, both. Akasha is the firstborn from the single, having only one quality, sound, which is sevenfold. And we've seen at the plane of prototypes from the plane of gods how the sevenfold cause of sound gathers at the plane of prototypes, and the sound itself is the cinema of logos, verb, or son, and it is the sevenfold. Akasha carries the memory of the spiritual ego. But what is this way that determines this appearance of the memory of the spiritual ego at which spiritual intuition arises and the eye of Dangma senses starts to sense? I would like to refer to Agni Yoga, the fiery world, the paragraph that says that the essence of aspiration depends on the potential of the spirit. The desire to merge with the cosmos leads the spirit to the meaning of unity in the entire universe. All light carriers are a badge to this unity. It's a beautiful description of this world in the memory of spiritual ego, and the way is like cycles that are set by the three reasons. First reason of the cycle is transmutation of old accumulations. Second one is clearing the space up, and the third one is injection of a great future. As you've noted, Akasha is the third state, is the Eye of Shiva that is the third one. Akasha actually being the third starts to accumulate this great future because there is transmutation of old accumulations when from the first to the fourth at the most solid physical plane till the seventh one will have this way covered and the space purified. So the two cycles of this way are over transmutation of all accumulations and clearing of the space. And Akasha in its third space state starts to inject the great future. This injection of the great future is actually Akasha, the state of complete completeness, till the moment when this injection of great future does not begin to manifest, and every vibration thought will be imprinted in Akasha, which keeps the memory of the spirit. And here is equilibrium. Because only with equilibrium it's possible to develop any speed, and any construction develops precisely where there is an equilibrium. And therefore we count cycles from this point, from the central point, where there is the most important fight arising, with this equilibrium emerging, and with choosing and calculating any speed that can be developed. So when we mention cycles, we can say that it is plastical essence that is changed depending on state of human being and karma and other circumstances. How can we calculate it as this plastic essence can change even now? Speed is being developed because we're in this space of equilibrium, in this aspiration, and we increase this space the way our consciousness can, and human being is capable of that. Because if with equilibrium we can develop any speed, and equilibrium can be can be found only when equilibrium opens the gate and the eye of Dangma feels the all-presence. It only can be achieved by higher radiations. Higher radiations eliminate decomposition of human thinking. If we do not apply these abstract notions given in the Secret Doctrine from the first slokas, from the preface, we will not be able to make them alive. We should always apply to human being. So by higher radiations achieving this state of Akashi manifestation, accumulating memory of the spiritual ego, as they disappear, it starts to decompose with human thinking. Then the human being does not have actions for the common good, no work for a common goal. Here is this mismatch of energies that a human being touches. Acceptance and transmutation of these following energies also are there, and instead of giving birth to new combinations, they destroy a person, and the first thing that happens is that a person stops to think, because the center of our body gives us balance. The solar plexus gives us basis, and the radiations of the solar plexus pass through all the centers and rotating their rays pierce all the centers, giving nutrition and unification with the one fiery energy, because every planet has its solar plexus, it's the divine fire, and if our mind gets wider, then microcosmos with macrocosmos become united. The waves are limitless in their variativity, and that is the way we get connected with other worlds. Getting to the center of the solar plexus is the way we inject great energy, and energy goes through all centers by rotating. The rays unite us by one fiery energy. That is why we have the white ray. With this unification, pure white ray of the divine sun that is shining from doors that was not parted. So when there is no partition, when the ray does not break, then there is shunyata, state of mind, particular state of mind when karma disappears and the high speed of sound arises, which finally becomes the cause of sound. Then the eye of Dangma can be opened from the plane of prototypes where Akasha reigns. That is the means that makes a creature capable of being anyone, including God, and be anywhere. This means is called shunya. This is what that is the great principle of shunya, which Gautama Buddha revealed to mankind. It is the innermost treasure, the path to the absolute through learning shunya, because shunya combines in itself a pure type of psychic energy and fire. If we take a pure psychic energy and an initial fire and unite them as a result, all cities of forces who affirm the progressive movement of will and information get united. These forces are combined with will and information, brought into action of those forces that contribute to opening the third eye, and the light of consciousness arises. The light of consciousness does not merge with anything and does not connect with anything, but penetrates everything by itself, releasing fire, and then it's possible to extract information from any plane, from the subtle plane, from the plane of mind and creativity, and even from nirvana and the plane of prototypes. We know many cases when the great scientists were extracting this information when they had, by these higher radiations and higher aspirations, light of mind, and they could extract information from any plane. And when it happens, we can get this four-flame weapon. It's renouncing the self, and hence by renouncing the illusory personality, and the individuality is manifested, which feeds on higher radiations, which lead to a state of equilibrium, to inner peace, and the eye of Dangma can feel the all presence of the one that has been unconsciously pulsating in space so far, and the sound of the great sound arises Om Mani Padme Hum. It penetrates everything and calls to great purification of the body, speech, and mind through achieving a state of inner peace. How to get into this space of inner peace? Love is the only attractive force and guide to the inner chambers, inner peace, the path from which goes to infinity. Love leads the mind to the gate of learning, where we see direct and credible knowledge, which does not include any reasoning or discourse, and therefore, by force of love, prana makes the way easy and shining, defining the movements on the way as beamy and fast towards opening the eye of Dangma. Therefore, alone the one form of existence stretched, boundless, infinite, causeless, and dreamless sleep, and life pulsated unconscious in universal space throughout the all-presence, which is sensed by the opened eye of Dangma. What conclusion can we make? The conclusion is the following. When we start reflecting and disputing, we do not have any knowledge. Akasha has not penetrated. The highest vibrations of the sound have been penetrated to our mind, have not brought this accumulation of the spiritual ego, but when it happens, reflections on ego disappear because there is light of consciousness and a truth which is one, which covers everything and which should be confirmed by representatives of the official science and proceed from it. It's the main mistake mentioned by HPB, by Rarix, by Mahatmas. It's the most important part where everything started. So the systematic study of the secret doctrine from beginning to its end in group, in consciousness of the group, when we can define our consciousness in thought of each notion and come to the single, it is the system. When we do not have any system, do not have any basis, do not have this skeleton, there is nothing to have basis on, and there we say that we don't know. But when we say we don't know, we have an opportunity to know. Dear members of the scientific group, dear speakers, thank you so much for these materials that sounded today. Sloka 8 of stanza 1. And here, it was scientific research results presented, and every speaker contributed to concentration of subtle notions. It is actually the great meditation.
So now I would like to ask the members of the scientific group to make final conclusions, to exchange ideas, express their opinion. Maybe they have time to answer some questions or address some doubt that were voiced today. So to address our speakers, please devote a couple of minutes to talk about this aspect. Now we have among our members, Michelina Hoster from United States of America. Michelina, can you hear us? Could you please make conclusive remarks? What's the impression you got after hearing the presentation of our speakers when we were talking about the 8th Shloka?
Each speaker gives an excellent point of perception of this Sloka. And of course, there are 7 keys that unlock all the locks. When we think about going and looking through the eye of Shiva, we get stopped by the mind because the mind has duality. 2, we always have to have a reference point to start with and a point to which we are looking. When these 2 become perfectly balanced at that one point, then the eye itself opens, because we become the reflection of that which is the eye, and then we can see through it. But it's the intellect itself that not only it builds steps, but when it gets to the top of the stairway, it has to stop because the door has no more steps. I thank them all, and I thank you.
Дорогая Мишлена, огромное
Thank you.
спасибо.
Dear Michelin, thank you very much. Ritma Lampia from Finland, the scientific community of Finland. Maybe you can share your opinion and add some comments now.
Thank you very much. Everybody spoke very, very clear and, how can I say, simple way, but I mean respect way, because there is very wonderful slide and of pictures also. And I think so, how important it we understand Sanskrit. I respect Sanskrit language now. I understand what Ravinda before in India said, how important in Sanskrit when we read this kind of text. And then I want to say, just mathematics professor, because I like mathematics, because numbers can tell so much, and sometimes words is very poor, very not so much, but when a lady said that how important, and we see on other side that all happened in our mind, and there is relative mind and absolute mind. And I think so every presentation were very, very high level. Thank you very much. And I want to say that also, when masters want to at HPB give Eastern wisdom to Western, and there is Russian between, and it's very nice we meet here Eastern people and Western people and Russian in between. Thank you very much, all brothers and sisters.
Rita, thank you very much for sharing your opinion, your impressions. Mr. Harinarendran, the floor is yours.
Namaste. Such a wonderful evening of talks. Everybody actually covered the various aspects of the Shloka number 8, and I'm so glad there was no overlap. But in this context, I would like to bring your attention to last week. For the first time, the president of the Theosophical Society discussed the diagram of meditation of HPB. He took an entire session, which I think is fitting into today's context. HPB's meditation is all about, unlike the other meditation techniques, she does not give importance to breaths. She talks of spacelessness and timelessness. So this is the essence of HPB's meditation technique, which is very well explained. If you can have a chance, go through it on the YouTube. Brother Tim Boyd was in India for the Indian section, and this is the third day when he discussed this in great detail. So regarding this dreamless state also, I would like to add one point. It is very important for everybody to get into the dreamless state, because physically, nervous system needs to take rest every day. The pralaya and the manavantara process is also happening every day. So it is explained in Theosophical literature that all of us, the best kind of sleep that we can all have is this dreamless state, one with the unity. So this concept is very important as far as we're all concerned. So we need to build up a very yogic life for this way of life. So thank you everybody once again for this opportunity. I would like others also to join in, and goodbye. Yeah.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Ratna Har from the Philippines. If you are here present with us, I saw you joining our meeting. Maybe you can comment a little bit. Mr. Ratna Har from the Philippines, Mr. Kolganov from Moscow, the candidate of philosophical sciences. Hello, dear participants. I would like to thank all of our members of all our speakers for their insightful presentations. I would like to express my gratitude to the organizers of this conference. It was a great opportunity for all of us to share our thoughts and opinions. As for the 8th Shloka, I would like to briefly comment on that. As a teacher of philosophy, I would like to note that there is a very rich philosophical content to this Shloka. The Shloka starts with the idea that alone the one form of existence. It refers to such form of existence that unites all previous forms of existence. What does it mean? It means that it keeps all the previous forms within itself from the past period of manifestation. Another word which is quite curious, this is the word boundless. Boundless means that there is the chance for new spaces with new parameters to come into existence. Another word from this shloka is infinite, meaning that it gives chance for any time periods to manifest themselves of any duration. And then causeless. Causeless means that it's primary, that there were no other reasons or no first reasons that will only be formed in the future in the form of any laws and traditions and rules. The way it will happen is still unclear. There are different questions to this answer. David Hume, the philosopher Hume, says that the reason appears based on the logical mistake that we make. He claims that after that doesn't mean that because of that, due to our habit, our human spirit develops a certain projection. Immanuel Kant was claiming that we humans do not study the law of nature, but rather we prescribe certain laws to the nature. And another comment that I would like to share with you is that the life or presence which is sensed, which was pulsating. What does it mean? It means that all the processes are united. Leibniz and Sigmund Freud were also commenting on that, and as a result, they use it to found their theory of unconsciousness, which was all-encompassing and explaining different manifestations and behaviors of human beings. Sergey Vitalyevich, thank you very much for your comments. Mr. Pandey, a couple of words from your side. The floor is yours.
Well, thank you. First of all, I compliment all the 4 speakers, the Ramprakash, Dr. Marina, Kishore and Dr. Rosikun Sargi, and also Dr. Vladimir Ervi and Yevgenia for their very explicit and pointed comments on this sloka. A few points. As we know that this stanza 1 is dealing with the cosmic night, and it contains 9 slokas. So we have reached 8th sloka. The first 7 slokas describe the cosmic night in the terms of negation. Now here in 8th sloka, if you see, the transition is occurring, both negation and the positive, both words are there. For example, the existence, one existence in dreamless sleep. One existence is a positive term and dreamless sleep is a negative term. And B part, life pulsating unconscious. Life pulsating is a positive term and unconscious is a negative term. It shows that cosmic night is gradually approaching the state of dawn, where we wake up in our consciousness. Now, the one darkness alone was in a state symbolized as the dreamless sleep. This analogy between the 2 states is also referred in Upanishads when it is said, like those who unaware of the place daily walk to and fro above a hidden treasure and find it not, so all these beings though daily going to the world of Brahman in deep sleep, yet find it not. That means deep sleep, the deep sleep state is very, very important for our spiritual progress, for our practices of meditation. And the deep sleep state can be experienced in waking consciousness also. For example, if you are studying a very serious book, say like Secret Doctrine, the first we are familiar with the words and pages, that is waking consciousness. And then we try to understand a little meaning, the deeper meaning. Then we enter the dreaming states. And then if we try to touch the mind of the writer, what is her opinion, Blavatsky opinion, or Mahatma's opinion, real essence of that para or that sentence, then we arrive in the dreamless state. So dreamless state can be experienced in our normal waking state also. And that is the whole purpose of serious study of books like Doctrine, Secret Doctrine, which is rightly called, the study itself becomes a meditation. And finally, whether we accept it or not.
Господин Пандей, огромное спасибо. Если можно...
Mr. Pandey, thank you very much. Can you please brief your presentation briefly?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, that you found time to leave your comments. They are extremely useful. It's really nice that you can butt in and add your comments, and they give us a fuller understanding of what we're talking here about. I'd like to listen to the representative of Atahata Lodge from Moscow. Could you please share your opinion about the seminar? The seminar is really great. The presentation of Mr. Rashupkin was extremely useful. I would like to praise him because he drew attention to the idea of Newton of absolute time, because it helps us to understand the idea of karma and in general the opportunity to understand this world using science. Because scientific hypotheses and conclusions cannot be made without addressing such questions. Another question is very important, is the ideas of Blavatsky that we were interpreting. And I think that your ideas support the theses that he made. So the chains can be varied in length. So the Earth chain is shorter, and the works, you can actually find proof of that. And if you use this analogy, then you can see that time can be measured differently. Konstantin, thank you very much. At our seminar, we had a very curious person. This person spoke for the first time at our seminars. This is the second season that we have been hosting such presentations. So we would like to hear opinion of our novice. Marina from Alexandrova from the USA, could you please share your opinion? Thank you very much for your invitation. The presentation was really insightful. The knowledge that you are providing is very deep. We're talking about different sciences. We use a scientific approach. I like your report very much. You said that the main force we use to explore the world, it's love. I really like this analogy of light and love. So on the one hand, you have to use sign, but on the other hand, you have to use this unique substance which unites everything. It's a very new perspective that I'm really happy to discover for myself. I'm really happy to talk to our colleagues and people who think deeply. Thank you very much. We are looking forward to seeing you at our Congress. We'll have the scientific symposium on the second day of our symposium. We will talk about the fourth Shloka. I hope that all the speakers will take part in this Shloka. I hope that you can come to Sochi in person and hear our interesting presentations. Vladimir Yari is going to present final conclusions. We have a question in the chat. It says that in Agni Yoga, it says that in the Shloka 208, it is claimed that you cannot delve into cosmogenetics while studying the secret doctrine. It is said that this is not the right way to go. It is true, indeed. In other words, you should not go far away from the reality. You cannot shut yourself from the reality, from this life. In our life, we have to use all the knowledge we have. All the knowledge we acquired, we have to use in our everyday life. By doing that, we'll improve the quality of our life. That's the main idea of living ethics, ethics of our life, which is very important. Cosmogenesis sometimes distracts and diverts our attention. So our attempts become more scientific rather than spiritual and aimed at our soul. But Mr. Pandey also mentioned that the dream can be without dreams and that it can be negative and perceived like negative. But rather, I would not say it that way. I think that that's the most important aspect here. Everything is dissolved in this consciousless substance and spirit, which can be seen by the open eye of dogma. So this is a certain state of emptiness and fullness. This is the unity that we see. In this unity, there is nothing that can fight against one another because it is all united, it is all encompassed, and it's all dissolved in itself. That's why we have to fully comprehend and enter this state. And this is the secret of meditation. We have to comprehend this emptiness. Thank you. There was another question. The question was whether it is dangerous to study the secret doctrine, because Ririhava in Agni Yoga warned about it. She warned that it can be dangerous. So this was the answer to this question. So it is dangerous to go cosmogenesis, but that's the only threat that exists there. But when you actually work and you interpret, and when you use this knowledge in your everyday life, you won't be far away from the reality. On the other hand, you will deploy your knowledge in everyday life. Thank you very much. Thank you everyone, all our participants, for your great contribution. I'd like to express our gratitude to our speakers, our interpreters and organizers. Our interpreters were with us for more than 2 hours now. They were keeping with us, interpreting all the tricky words we were speaking. So I'm really grateful to you. Mr. Kuleshov, Brezhnev, Yegorov, thank you very much for your technical support for the presentation that you prepared for us. And you helped us with the technical support to make these presentations really smooth. Today, we really wanted to invite all of you to go to the Theosophical Congress, which will take place in Sochi on the 28th and 30th November. Now we'll show you the presentation in both languages for you to get an idea what this Congress is going to be about. We'll tell you about our agenda, about the main presentations we're going to have. For the first time, we're going to have the children's exhibition of paintings devoted to Ms. Blavatsky. We are going to have the first exhibition of esoteric stones, which have their very special symbols. At this Congress, we are going to have the premiere of the fourth part of Martinov, the createness and the truth, and also the presentation of work of Blavatsky. So we're going to have another new projects. Our agenda is quite interesting. That's why we're really looking forward to seeing you either in person or online. Please send us your comments. It's very easy for us to stay online, to be together. In November, we're going to have the presentation on the 11th of November with the virtual Center of Theosophy. And then we are going to see each other when we're going to talk about the first stroke at our online seminars. Thank you very much. Light and love to all of you.
Secret Doctrine by Blavatsky. Dedicated to all true Theosophists. Book of the Third Millennium.
Blavatsky only knew